Okay, so it is now 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. on Tuesday, November 26, 2019, and we will open the Wellfleet Select Board public meeting at the Senior Center. First will be announcements, open session, public comment. Comments must be brief. We cannot deliberate on or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Are there any comments or announcements from the board? From the audience? Okay, moving right along, community project update. Do you want to come up to the table, please? You can grab an extra chair if you want, if you need to.
We're also recording this meeting, so the more you can speak into the microphone, the better for our audience at home.
So I'll pass the microphone back
Thank
and
you.
forth as needed. Good evening. Thanks for having us. My name's Ronit Goldstein. I'm with Eversource Energy. Community Relations is my role, and I cover the Cape and Martha's Vineyard part of the South Shore, and so I'm your Community Relations representative for Wellfleet. I'm here tonight to introduce myself first. I have business cards. I have my email and my cell phone if anyone wants. I'm very accessible and happy to come back before the board on another matter, or if you have any questions, I'm definitely approachable and reachable. So I just wanted to put that out there. Our role covers a variety of items, communication with the towns, both elected officials, town staff, appointed committees, et cetera, and area organizations. I always put a plug in that if there are organizations in the area that you believe deserve a grant, we do have a community impact grant program. So it's something to consider, and I'm happy to take suggestions if you want to email me or call me. We're looking at 2020 at this point, and so the only requirement is that they're a 501c3 organization, but we definitely want to give back to the communities that we serve. So with that, I'm here before you tonight. I have with me two key folks on this conversion project. It's a reliability project that will serve the town, 3 out of the 4 circuits, the center of town and the harbor. Some much needed improvement, and I think folks in town, residents will feel the difference. So I have with me Brian Sullivan, who's the manager of electric operations for Cape Cod, and Paul Sellers, who's the manager of vegetation management, otherwise known as tree trimming and et cetera. He's your guy when it comes to tree questions. So I believe an overview, Dan, was sent to the board.
Yes.
It's a conversion project, and Brian can correct me if I make any technical mistakes, but we're basically looking to increase reliability, to have restoration by, if we have a storm, restoration time be as short as possible. And so the improvements will connect 3 of the 4 circuits in town that currently don't have a connection and don't have the switch capability that allows us to feed electricity from different directions. So if a section goes out, the remote switch capability allows us to feed electricity and basically bring down the number of residents that are impacted, and businesses as well. I should say that since I was appointed the Cape, I've been working well with your police department, your Chief Fizette, or former Chief Fizette, and the acting chief, Chief Hurley. They've been wonderful. I worked with them the day that the substation was struck by lightning on July, which also is better known as the day of the tornadoes. I was actually in your police station that morning when the tornadoes hit, dealing with the substation, which then became not as big it was still a big impact to the town, but then we had a lot more to do on the Cape that day, I should say. It was, and the rest of that week, and Brian and Paul were there as well that week. So we've been working closely with them, and they're aware of this project, helping us with police details and any other information that we can provide them. The upgrade will include installation, and you've seen some of it already, installation of poles, wires, switch capability, as I mentioned, and will involve some tree trimming and tree removal to allow for more space. Part of the reason for that is that we're also increasing the voltage. It's going from 8 kV to 23 kV, which will give you a more robust system, again, better reliability. So that's kind of the general overview. And the timing of that is in the coming weeks. And I don't know if we should take questions that both Paul and Brian can answer, or myself, or if you guys want to say a few words.
Why don't we wait for all three of you to speak if you have something to say, and then we can ask questions. If you have something to say, yeah.
I can just speak a little bit to the project itself right now. The circuit that feeds down Main Street out to Chaquisette Neck, it's what we call a radial circuit. There's no backup feed, as Ronit said. So what we're trying to do is create a tie, is what we call it, so that if there's damage at the beginning of the circuit that would normally have the entire circuit out, we can tie it at the end of the circuit and back feed, keep as many customers on as possible. We're also down at School Street, we're connecting two of the high voltage circuits together for the same reason. So we now have capabilities that we can do switching from Plymouth Dispatch to pick up as many customers as we can in a shorter amount of time. So that's kind of the basics of what the project is about. Right now, it's fed. There's a substation, the one that was struck by lightning off of Gross Hill Road. We're going to tie that
Okay.
with sorry if I'm not in the microphone. So we're going to tie the circuits together with a new step-down pad-mounted transformer behind Town Hall, as you've seen. That will give us two substations, essentially. So if one fails, the other one picks up the load.
Good. Well, the town thanks you. Would you like to say anything?
So with any of this overhead construction, we're going to have some interference with trees, and some of the areas, the spans that are being converted are going from having just a secondary line to a full three-phase line to provide that increased power. So it's required us to identify a number of trees for removal and pruning. So our areas that we've been focusing on are, of course, part of Main Street, School Street, and Howland Lane. So we've targeted about 43 trees for removal. Of those 43 trees, only 2 of them are actually within the town road layout. The rest are on private property. So the way we do that, approach that, is we dispatch one of our certified arborists into the field, and they start to identify those trees that they feel are going to be in conflict, and they approach the property owners to secure permission. Even on the 2 trees that are within the town road layout that come under the purview of your tree warden, we still reach out to the abutting property owner at that point to make sure that they're comfortable with what we're trying to do and we get their consent. Those 2 trees that are within the road layout, we have received consent from those property owners. We still have a number of trees in the School Street area that we're still waiting to get a response from the property owners down there. But overall, we've had a positive, receptive interaction with the homeowners throughout the project. If we can't remove the trees, we're going to just prune them. The reason why we want to remove them is we feel we'll compromise the crowns quite a bit. A lot of the trees primarily are locusts, black locusts, invasive species to begin with, very spindly in character. So by the time we end up pruning them to get the clearance for the new high voltage distribution lines, there isn't a whole lot of canopy left. So we've sent emails to them, physical mail. We've tried to reach them by phone. So we're going to continue to do that, and we'll probably continue to do that through the spring just to try and complete that project. We have actually extended to a number of the property owners the opportunity to grind some of the stumps from that work, and we've identified already 8 locations for replanting. So we've done some of that outreach as well. So overall, it's going pretty well for us, and we expect the pruning to continue through December, just as the wires are strung and the cross arms are put up, just to make sure we have adequate clearance so we don't take any outages from trees.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I noticed in the last really about 5 years or so since we've had, major nor'easters, that Eversource has been pruning really all along Route 6 and all through towns, and I do think it's made pruning or taking down trees. And I said before the meeting, you can just drive down Route 6 and there's some really old, rotten, dead trees, and I hope the homeowners they're not even in the areas you're referring to today. But yeah, they need to be taken down, and nobody likes trees taken down, but nobody not likes losing electricity either, so I hope it's in a good balance, which I'm sure it is. Any questions from the board? Kathleen?
Yeah, when is the project going to be finished?
Our goal is by year's end, so January 1st. Depending on some of the extra poles, so like Verizon sets all the poles in the area. So what you'll see is we'll come and we'll top the poles at phone level, which is probably about 20 feet up. So you'll see a double pole situation where once we're done, we put the information into a database. Comcast will come and transfer over to the new pole. Then Verizon will come and transfer over the new pole, and they'll take the old pole with them. So you'll see some activity after the first of the year, and probably into maybe February with each utility.
I'm inconvenienced by this project because I live off of Main Street.
Okay.
So I have to go around, enormously go out of my way to avoid what's happening. And you're probably going to be using a police detail until this is finished?
Correct.
Yeah. And 43 trees, that bothers me greatly. Howland Lane looks like something nuclear went off on the end of it, across from the library. There's not a tree there on that corner. Janet sees it another way. I'm just astounded that we have to lose this many trees. And, you know, we're struggling to keep the shade canopy that we have here. Wellfleet's probably on its third or fourth growth. Everything that was grown here before the settlers, or, you know, was used for building and shipbuilding. So we're kind of holding on to our trees a little bit. School Street in particular, you drive under a canopy of shade in the summertime. So whether it's scrappy locust or you think it's invasive, it's offering us shade. And we had a wonderfully tree, lined Main Street up until about 12 years ago, when we lost many elms to Dutch elm disease. I'm glad I'm going to be a recipient of the project, because I'm one of the people that loses power for an extended period of time down towards the DPW building and the transfer station. But concerned about the police detail that you're going to need until the first of the year. That's taking them off from, other work, and the trees that we're going to lose.
Justina? Oh, you go
Right,
ahead.
addressing the
Okay.
tree issue. So that you mentioned specifically Howland, and that's one of the areas where we have tree planting being replaced. Location you're talking about, we had like 5 pitch pines come down there, probably about 12-inch diameter. So that's one of the locations we're actually going to do quite a bit of stump grinding. We've already engaged the property owner. We'll be replanting that strip all along there. With a more appropriate species that isn't going to grow up into lines. We're not going to be subject to having to remove them 20 years from now. So we're more than responsive if there's a concern about replanting on this project. We're happy to work with your DPW, your tree warden, and find those locations to we'd rather enhance when we leave, rather than leave you with the impression that we're just out there to remove the trees solely for the construction effort. So we're more than happy to engage you in any other tree planting.
Oh, good, thank you.
Justina, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Kathleen raised important points, but I also think that in many different contexts, unfortunately, trees that get too tall can cause various kinds of problems, falling on people's heads. We had a live wire on my road last year where the tree took it down, and we had live sparks till someone could come in and correct it. I think it must have been you guys. So I'm happy that you're going to listen to Kathleen's concerns and our tree wardens and so forth. But I understand you're doing necessary work.
Helen?
Couple of questions. So if a property owner doesn't want you to cut down a tree on their property, they can say no.
Correct.
And if a property owner doesn't want you to prune on their property, if the branch doesn't go over into the town layout, they can say no.
So that's where we get into a bit of an issue. If someone's adamant that we're not going to finish a proper pruning cut in the tree, that's going to leave a stub. You know, we can certainly cut it right to the property line edge, but we'll be doing more damage than we are actually any good. So we've been very successful. We've had very few situations over the years where we've not been able to do an adequate, pruning back to the trunk of the tree.
Okay, so I have some more questions. Kathleen brought up a number of the things I wanted to bring up. I just want to enhance the detail a little bit. What we know is that wherever you have asphalt with light hitting it, particularly hot weather light and the long summers, you get way more warming. You know, there's all kinds of science on this, and we need all the trees we can get. That's the first thing I wanted to add to what Kathleen said and what Justina abetted. Of course, you know, it's the middle of winter, you don't want to lose power. I grew up here, it's a fine balance. What if you're on an oxygen machine? You know, the whole thing. It's difficult. But you mentioned that you're going to be doing some replanting. What species are you going to use, and are you replanting on private property if the owner says yes to it? So what species, just clarify, you said there are only two trees that you've taken down that are in the town layout, okay, and yet there are 43 trees, so that's 41 trees on private property. Is that what you're going to address or have already addressed?
As far as replanting?
No, as far as taking down.
Right now, we only have 16 trees that we've actually secured permission for, definitely. We've targeted at 43 in total. We're
Okay.
still waiting to receive some
Okay.
permissions back.
Thank you. I just, it's a public meeting, so this way
Sure.
and it's generous of you to show up and to help us understand this, so thank you, because it's been going on and I've heard quite a bit about it, all kinds of things. So what happens to the wood? I'm a great champion of black locusts. They're good for everything. I don't like to call them invasive. I call them robust, and they came to help us. Highlight shade, best burning wood, really good for fence posts, so on and so forth. And they are nitrogen fixing. And I know all about how they can come down. I've experienced that on my property. But, so if you call them invasive, I'm going to get touchy. It's just me. But what happens to that wood? Because it's very, very good firewood. Do you take it to the dump?
Sure. So when we go through the permissioning process with our arborists in the field, contacting the homeowners, that's one of the items that they engage them about is the wood. Do you want to keep the wood, or would you rather have us take it away? So I don't have the stats on who's keeping the wood. Actually, I do. So there's a number of the permissions that we've received. About half have said that they want the wood hauled away. But that could be pitch pine,
Yeah,
not just locust.
people don't tend to want to burn pine for a
Right.
variety of reasons. But anyway, let's say you've got some good firewood there. Are you taking it to the dump?
The contractor that we have doing the work, Warwick Tree, I believe that they may reprocess some of that wood, so.
Yes, now this has come up before in my experience at this table years ago. You understand that reprocessing it, I'm looking at our town administrator, reprocessing it is something that people pay for that wood to reprocess it. They do various things with it. And the amount of money that one can get for that kind of wood to be used in various ways can amount to something fairly substantial. And it's something that if a private property owner has it, it's one thing. But if it was on town property, you would really have to have it go through the town, because it would be something owned by the town that was a asset you know, as it were, it's property, and you're going to be making money off it. So you said just 2 trees, but heads up about that.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
well-
and I can just say, you know, if the town has a wood bank, I don't know if you do.
Yes.
Yes,
they're
we
done.
do.
Yeah, you're certainly more than
Yeah.
welcome to have us even help supply some of the wood to the wood bank, so.
Okay, so just to refine my last point about this issue. So a private property owner says, we don't want to keep it. You can take it. Does it help our bill if you then receive it from the private property owner and do what you call giving it to someone else and they process it? Or can you just, in other words, does that help our bill in terms of what you charge us? Because if it doesn't, I really feel that if it's good firewood, it should go to, you know, the dumps so that people can go and get it. You know?
Sure. Yeah, so we put out our rates, competitively bid them with a number of different contractors. So that's kind of factored into their bidding scheme of what they want to put down for their rates.
Okay, so this does help the town's bill.
Yes, I mean, though all of our work is competitively bid, so it's,
Okay. But let's say it wasn't included in the factoring, wasn't factored into the bid. It could go to the dump if the private property owner didn't want it.
yes,
And then people could know about it and go and get it. So
yeah.
many people burn wood here.
yeah.
Okay, so, yeah. Okay, oh yeah, there was one thing I didn't understand quite. And maybe the rest of us did. But, so what you're talking about, it's a little bit like with water systems, where you have more than one well, you have redundant wells. So what we're going to have now, that we didn't have before, yeah, his turn, is if there isn't enough juice, for whatever reason, there's an event, you know, a weather event or whatever, you can get it from somewhere else. I understood that part, but here's the question. In this town, at this end of the Cape, is there enough juice overall anyway to take care of us? Do you see what I mean? In other words, can our needs be met generally, or are we close to some kind of threshold where actually we don't get that much power at this end of the Cape?
No,
I'm
you have-
revealing my ignorance, but
No, it's a good question, and I think a few years ago, probably 10 to 15 years ago, those worries would have come up. But if you notice how many solar panels are going up, how many wind farms are going up, we're installing a battery system in Provincetown. We actually have almost too much, where we're starting to get high voltage readings because there's so much solar and wind and kind of green energy being pumped into the system. So definitely
good.
not a worry.
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Great news.
Is this something that will, in some way, harm the setup? Do you see what I mean? In other words, high voltage readings, is that something that could damage the setup?
No, we have voltage regulators. We have pieces of equipment basically that can step up or step down the voltage. And every time it goes in, like you're out of that substation on Gross Hill Road, you'll have the step down pad mount at the town hall. Those will regulate the voltage as well, going from high voltage to low voltage. So
Okay.
it's not a problem. We see it on our system. So some of the smart switches that we're installing out on the main drags and in the right-of-ways and stuff, we can see that high voltage as they're pumping it in. But
And-
we do have equipment that will
And now
adjust.
for my
and-
last question. So you get it all set up, it's around January, and are you going to know if this all works? Is there some way you test it before the weather tests it for us? Do you see what I'm saying? Here
We'll
in
test.
Wellfleet.
Yeah, so a lot of your residents, and probably Town Hall as well, you'll see, we're gonna take 2 outages on the system. One, I believe, is December 15th, the other one December 30th. When we do that, what we're doing is we're taking, right now, the step down, as we call it, going from high voltage to low voltage is on a pole just before Town Hall and Main Street. We're gonna take those down. We're gonna feed it high voltage into the Town Hall parking lot. It's gonna go into that transformer and back out. When we do that, we'll test all the voltage, and we'll test each And the three-phase customers will test rotation with each of them to make sure that everything's running. Any three-phase system, if you have pumps or any kind of three-phase of equipment, we test each of those banks at each spot.
So I would think that that would be true, but it's good to put it out there so that we understand. For example, we just got 2 dates, okay? And I'm out on the highway to the north of town, so I hope this doesn't affect me, but there are other people, who live within the area that's going to be affected. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I'm going to make one
Sure.
to that extent. If there's a scheduled outage that customers would feel, we typically take those, I would imagine, at night. I don't know if those are scheduled for night, the 15th and the 30th.
I believe so, yeah,
Okay,
because
so-
there's businesses involved.
Right, we typically tape, I feel like it's an important thing to say, especially if folks watch this, that they would get noticed of this outage. They'd be given a window so they can have a heads up, and it wouldn't be on the day of, it would be in advance of the outage, typically by mail, and sometimes it's followed by a robocall. But it would be an overnight outage while people are sleeping.
Robocalls are very dangerous because I had to hang up on 10 of them last night.
Okay.
Just so you know, so just putting that out there.
Okay, that's okay. They usually say Eversource if you have caller ID, but yeah. Okay, Mike had a question?
I just have a couple things I'd like to ask of Eversource. Basically, I'd like you to think about going forward, maybe trying to replace one tree for every tree that's taken down. In some respect, throughout a town or community, I think it would be prudent and show goodwill towards the communities. So like 1 for 1. I don't know if that's possible for you or something that you can think about going forward, but I think it would make a big difference for communities that, have these sort of upgrades. And the other thing I was wondering if it's possible for you to do is, I know you have your form to fill out whether they want to keep the wood or have it hauled away. I was wondering if you could have another box that said, would you like to donate it to the wood bank? And then, I don't know, if you can haul it, maybe not, but maybe the DPW could come and get it, or I'm not sure. We could have some volunteer sort of situation. Is that something that you could possibly do?
Sure. So in regard to the wood bank, whenever we do a tree removal effort, we've pretty much outlined what we're doing now on this project, and it's in scope, kind of small, defined area downtown. But we do a lot of tree removal efforts, hazard tree removals, all the time, and we're targeting different communities based on reliability and how trees have influenced that. And that's usually the stimulus to go in and start looking for hazard trees. We can, when we come back into Wellfleet, because at some point we'll be doing tree removals again, we could certainly add that component to our permissioning form specific for Wellfleet. So whenever we're in your community, it's always key to remember that you guys drive the bus on this. Your tree warden has a influential role in what we do and how we do it. So doing something like that and adding to the wood bank, big fan of the wood banks. There's a great opportunity there for everybody. In regard to tree planting, certainly in any program like this where we're doing new construction, that's the best time to take advantage of tree planting opportunities. When we're doing general hazard trees throughout a circuit area, a lot of the trees that we're removing are either volunteer growth or they're actually hazard trees. So we're not going to plant a 1 for 1, but when we're in town doing these programs, again, that's the perfect time for us to have a conversation with your tree warden or your boards and look for opportunities to do replanting. So we do replanting. It's just, it would be this year.
Yeah.
We'll remove close to 30,000 trees across the state, hazard trees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's unlikely we're going to replant 30,000 trees.
Sure, yeah, I understand, like, certain trees are not worthy of replanting, or they're too dense or whatever, incidentally. But I'm wondering, do you guys have like a ratio at all that you use, or is it just a case-by-case basis?
It's really a case-by-case basis. So, and again, I'll use Wellfleet real quickly as an example. you actually just have a really, really small kind of classic urban setting, landscape, Main Street, this downtown area where you've seen people deliberately plant, maples, different types of ornamental species that would be considered a classic street tree. 80% of the rest of the town is woods and native trees and that roadside growth. So like the downtown center of Wellfleet, I mean, that's the perfect place to be looking for, replanting opportunities, so.
Janet, one extra.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. You didn't pin down what species you offer, and I understand it wouldn't happen this year. And also, are you aware that we have a very good, very functional private group that works with the town called the Wellfleet Arbor Committee? And they, for example, just planted 4 trees in the center of town, and it would be hoped that you could work with them. So what species do you generally offer when you do this?
It's wide open.
Good.
In the last year, we actually developed a poster, 30 trees under 30 feet for a placement near utility lines. We don't restrict it to, we're only going to plant trees right underneath the utility lines that are compatible. We also look for opportunities to plant classic street trees away from the utility lines. So really it's an open palette as far as that's concerned. Obviously I like trees as an arborist, so there's plenty of things for us to choose from, so.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
One more, yeah.
Okay.
So does a homeowner, if you're cutting down a tree, do they sort of have a little bit of leverage, I guess I'd ask, to request a tree planting if you're taking down a tree on their land?
During these construction projects, there's a lot more latitude to accommodate that because we're assuming a new space, we're putting in different equipment, so there's an impact aesthetically. The traditional areas where we already have poles and wires and we're doing removal projects, generally no. Then it's generally something we may do in conjunction with the town, the DPW, again, the tree ward.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Good, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I call you during a storm?
Yeah.
You'll get me in the arm.
Your cell phone.
I'll be working.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, let's,
thanks.
for our minute taker.
Yes, and
the
give
names.
one,
yeah, I have
give
it all.
one to
We've got
Dan.
that one.
Yes, and give one to Dan, too. Thanks.
Okay.
Wonderful, thank you. And next up is where am I? NRA, there we go. Natural Resource Advisory Board. Thanks, thank you.
We don't have him.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't think you guys.
Good evening. Let me introduce, first of all, who we have here. John Duane on my left, a member of our committee for many years, also on the Shellfish Advisory Board, which makes a nice link. Laura Hewitt, who is a resident on Long Pond and sort of our focal point for ponds issues. 2 people couldn't be with us tonight are Tom Flynn and Tom Slack. So the way this was introduced to me from Dan's email is what have we been up to? And what we are up to, and this draft is perhaps helpful, higgledy-piggledy. What we're up to is putting together the 3rd Wellfleet Harbor Management Plan. The first one was in 1995, the second one was in 2006. Here we are in 2019. The original idea was that there should be one every 10 years, but as we looked at what was going on in the town, some of the key recommendations from the 2006 plan were still very much in flux, and that's the Herring River project, the Mail Creek project, the wastewater project, the dredging project. So it didn't seem like it was appropriate to do a new plan until we had something new to talk about. So these are some of the ideas we're looking at. Climate change, interesting, in the 2006 plan, climate change was never mentioned. Times have changed. Some of the things that I particularly would call out, we're concerned about protecting the salt marshes, because with climate change you get sea level rise and there's a risk of drowning the salt marshes. If sea level is going up and we get more rain, then groundwater is going up, and that affects the wastewater projects in town. And another interesting thought, it's my new word for the month, is phenology. And what phenology means is you're thinking about the match or mismatch between natural cycles. And I first learned about this from some work done with birds in Britain. Birds migrate according to the sun, but the insects they eat hatch according to the temperature. And so if the temperature goes up earlier than the sun would predict, the insects have hatched and gone, the birds show up and they're hungry. And I think it's possible that something similar could happen with shellfishing as between the birth of spat and the growth of the phytoplankton. Fortunately, there's a fairly easy solution in principle, and that is to have sufficient biodiversity so that the shellfish can respond to the change. We're concerned about dredging, not the current dredging, but what happens after the current dredging. What can we do to minimize the need for dredging? That's what I mean by maintenance dredging. And a particular highlight, and I'd like John to talk about this, is to redo something called the Curley Report, which is a report which is nearly 50 years old. We call it the Curley Report because he was the lead author.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so the Curley Report was, it was done by the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries. It was prepared in 1972, and it was done with the study time period was between 1968 and 1969, covered, I think, 12 months. And it's a very comprehensive study. It's called the Study of the Marine Resources of Wellfleet Harbor. And it was part of a series that was done by the Mass DMF. The last one of those that was done, I believe, was in 2002, and it was a report on Salem Sound. But it was a very thorough report about everything to do with Wellfleet Harbor and fish, you know, the income that was being derived from shellfish, how many shellfish were there, the state of the salt marshes, and even there was a section on birds, the birds of Wellfleet. So it was very comprehensive, and for its time, it really was, you know, pretty thorough. There is somebody from Center of Coastal Studies, and his name's Owen Nichols, and they prepared a report recently for the Friends of Pleasant Bay that is basically, it's the same thing. It's a study of the marine resources of Pleasant Bay. And it was really kind of like modeled after that, and it details what kind of fish were in Pleasant Bay. There was a section on microplastics, for instance. You know, they were measuring that. So there's new things to be studied here. And, you know, one of the recommendations of the original Curley Report was to redo the report every 10 years. And so now it's been 50 years since it's been done. And we believe that this should be done more frequently, perhaps even every 5 years. And what's going to be important is to figure out what do we actually want to know, what's important to everybody here. A lot of people use the harbor. You know, there's all sorts of different uses. People shellfish, people finfish. And certainly Wellfleet Harbor is one of the crown jewels of, you know, Massachusetts embayments. I think it's important for the residents here. It's one of the things that draws people here, to update what happened 50 years ago, and let's see where we're at, so we can start establishing a baseline and keeping track of how things are going in Wellfleet Harbor. So that's it.
Maybe the other interesting thing about this particular project is it's the one thing where I think NRAB will take the lead. Most of our report is asking somebody else to do something, but we would do this one ourselves.
You would do the Curly report yourself? Is that what you're saying?
Not
the Curly
We're not going to
report,
be
but
out
yeah.
there in the harbor doing it, but we're going to manage the project, look for the money, try to drive the project.
Okay, so one reason why the select board wants committees to come before them is to know what future money you may need or what you do need. So that would be good if you put that together so so we're not taken by surprise.
Dollar signs, okay.
Yeah.
Shellfishing, it's another interesting contrast, remembering back to the 2006 report. There was a lot of concern about shellfishing at that time, particularly having to do with various diseases. And we have met twice with the Shellfish Advisory Board. My sense is it's much better managed now. And I had some difficulty coming up with things to say. I mentioned the word plastics. That was actually an initiative of the Shellfish Advisory Board they're moving toward, try to use non-permanent, not use plastics, use biodegradable things. What to do about microplastics, which is another issue, I do not know, but we may learn something when we meet with Owen. 2 or 3 quick things at the end. We're also responsible for coastal and pond access since the old committee disappeared. We have a report. It's a couple of years old, but still pertinent. We didn't quite know what to do with it, so it's going to be an appendix to the harbor management plan. There was an outstanding piece of work actually sponsored by the Shellfish Advisory Board, authored by Seth Toller. That's still pertinent. I want that also to be an appendix to this. We have met with the Shellfish Advisory Board, Open Space Committee. We'll meet with CONSCOM, Marina Advisory Board, Wastewater Planning Committee, so we're trying to reach out to other committees. And I hope this is an opportunity where we can hear from you, either as a board or as individuals, of any issues, concerns, questions. We're getting close to where we've had a bunch of conversations. We're going to have to start putting something together soon. So this is
Yeah.
a good time to speak up.
No, it's really good, and you guys do a great job and a very important job. Are there any questions from the board, comments? Kathleen?
A couple of things. Are you aware of the committee that's working at the State House on ocean acidification? Wellfleet does not have a representative on that panel, and I'm not sure what kind of time any of you could volunteer. This is something that State Senator Julian Cyr is very impassioned about with regard to climate change, and I think it would be significant for us to have some sort of representation there. This is a committee, a panel that's going to look just at that one problem. I also...
A brief comment on just ocean acidification. We specifically raised that question with the Shellfish Advisory Board in the sense, had they noticed any problems?
Yeah.
The answer was no. The solution is likely to be biodiversity.
Yes. I think the next thing I wanted to say, and this is just a comment that I've heard from several residents. We've had some repaving done in Wellfleet this past fall, in particular Long Pond Road. I'm told that the repaving was not honoring the stormwater runoff management plan that we have on Long Pond Road. I'm hoping that you guys are monitoring that, but this is a company that did this for the town, and the DPW does have that plan, that stormwater management plan, and the drainage apparently is not correct.
Thank you for reminding me of that. It was an idea that has been in my head but never made it onto the paper, so that's useful.
That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mike?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you guys are planning on picking up a harbor health report, the Curley report, again. It is important because actually the marine environment changes quite rapidly sometimes. And, you know, I know in 2005, was it the last one, or?
2006.
And there was a lot of concern about disease. It was a lot to do with oyster disease. And currently, I mean, we are sort of like at the epicenter of a clam disease that is really nowhere else. And there's no understanding of where it comes from, how it's spread, whether it's in the soil. And it's been retarding the growth of clams and also killing clams in massive numbers. And our clam, wild clam and farm clam harvesting numbers are way down from where they used to be. And so I think it's important. There's no funding to research this in the state. There's really no one researching it right now. There was some work being done at Woods Hole, and I think that's not happening anymore. They just didn't have any funding.
Suppose talking with Nancy would be a good starting point.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a huge challenge, sort of, you know, and
Okay.
and I don't know, you know, where to go with that, but it's definitely an issue right now. And if you talk to anybody who grows clams, they're struggling with clams. Yeah, oysters, you know, it seems like we've had a string of, I would call it good luck, because, you know, there's a lack of genetic diversity as far as hatchery seed goes. So, you know, it's great in Wellfleet that we can catch hat seed or wild spat and then protect that over winter and allow it to spawn again, to sort of keep the harbor with some genetic diversity. But as far as, you know, things changing, I think it's a really good idea to do it every 5 years, because that's how things can change so quickly in the marine environment with climate change. And I have noticed things change over the last 5 years, and it's hard to say about ocean acidification because we don't really know if there's like algae that are dying or growing in those different areas, which could make you know, low dissolved oxygen situations in the water. There's a lot that we don't know about what's actually happening right now in the water column. So really happy to
So
see
did,
you guys
Thank you.
are pursuing that.
Good.
sorry, so did you say you have contracted or talked with Owen Nichols?
So,
Like, in other words, is the process starting?
actually, so I just spoke to Owen today, and we wanted to get together with him to try and get a ballpark starting point, what would be involved, what the cost would be. And, you know, one of the important things is what do we want to really know? And he's going to start asking us, well, what do you want to learn about Wellfleet Harbor? So anybody that's got suggestions about topics that would be really important to focus on to keep track of every 5 years or so would be helpful. So it hasn't started yet, but sometime next week, we're going to try to get together and meet
Okay.
with him
Good,
and figure out a plan of action.
okay.
Three things.
Okay,
My hand up.
I know.
I was putting it. Three things. One is, thank you so much for being more in touch with the Shellfish Committee, because I'm not sure if
Talk
John...
into the mic, please.
Thank you so much for being more in touch with the Shellfish Committee, because the last time this happened, there was an egregious lack of communication. And the NRAB actually went pretty far along. This is way back in the day, before they came to the Shellfish Committee, who said, wait a minute, They had a section that was really unrelated in many ways. That's the first thing I wanted to say, thank you. The second thing is acidification and biodiversity. So aren't all shellfish shells affected by acidification? Or what did you mean by biodiversity? Different species that might be commercially?
The feeling is that it would be very difficult for people in Wellfleet to deal with acidification. If you have sufficient biodiversity amongst I'm thinking particularly of the wild oyster population.
So you meant all shellfish.
All shellfish. But
Here we go.
what the theory is that some of those shellfish will not be as susceptible to harm from ocean acidification as others. And those are the ones that will grow and thrive and survive, which is exactly what happened. This bird example like I talked about in Britain, you found that the birds adjusted. And they adjusted because they had sufficient biodiversity to do that. That's the way any population moves in terms of any sort of environmental pressure.
So the third thing is, really one needs a new Curley report to find out what needs to be looked at in the plan in a funny way. In other words, I'm very much a fan of having the Curley report, and I hope that you all research the grants a lot, because it's a wide field, and there are a lot of categories you could apply for grants in. But in order to figure out what to do, what to plan for, doesn't one sort of have to know what's going on better than simply guessing at it? Do you see what I'm saying? I'm wondering what the order of this is. Should the plan be ongoing in terms of developing it and, drafting it at the same time you're getting the information from the Curley report, or should a new, we don't have to call it the Curley report, we can call it the Duane report, or whatever. Should we do that first, and then how do you get money? And are you guys going to go after money for this?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. It's an interesting question. You could design a report so that the answers given could be immediately applied to certain questions. Or you could devise a report that gave you a broad background and might help you identify questions you didn't know existed. And somewhere like that, you got to do a balance.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why we need some professionals to do this.
Justina, did anybody else? Okay.
First of all, thank you. This was really a pleasure to listen to. Thanks for all the hard work. And second of all, as you know, Wellfleet, with the rest of the Cape, has a new room occupancy tax with the water protection 2.75 tacked onto it. That's for water protection. Mm-hmm. And I'm on the fund committee that now is just in the bylaw state. But if there's money there that's applicable to your study, I'll let you know.
I would appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. Anybody else? Great, thank you.
One more thing.
all right.
Did you say you're going to have some sort of forum to sort of determine the important pieces to put in it? Did you?
Hadn't thought that far, but that's a good starting point.
I mean,
The first thing to do is sort of define the concept, write up the concept, so we have a chance to go after some money. But
right.
That's
Okay.
a good way to proceed.
I guess I was wondering, will the board sort of have any sort of open dialogue before it determines what will be looked into in the report? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
what the criteria of the report will be, just so that you don't maybe miss something that could be vital to be looked into, that maybe isn't in the purview of just the board itself, the advisory, the Natural Resources Advisory Board.
Yep, it's good advice. Fair enough.
I would think, too, that Owen Nichols would know pretty much exactly what to look for, and I know that for the past, well, we're already in 2020 almost, so really for the past 30 to 40 years, there has been background testing, water testing, so we have a basis. And I would think that, I hear what you're saying, and that I'm sure there will be inputs, certainly from the shellfish community and other water
And not just the
communities.
shelf, I mean,
But, yeah, I would think the experts would know exactly what to do.
We are, we're fortunate that there are lots of partners we can.
Yeah, exactly.
The Seashore, Audubon,
Yeah.
Center for Coastal Studies, APCC. There's lots of people we can go to get some help.
Yeah. Justina?
It's all right. There's one more thing I forgot to say. I assume that you're keeping tabs on the wastewater committee, and in particular, Scott Horsley's recommendation is coming out on their meeting on Monday.
Meeting, I've been invited, I plan to go.
Oh, great. So you're already on it. Thanks.
Good, great.
Yeah, one last thing about the, you mentioned what to ask for. Owen sent me the reports they did. There's 3 reports he sent me. The one from Pleasant Bay recently. There's also an electronic copy available of this Curley report, which, back in 1972, there wasn't such a thing. So I've got a copy of that I can send to the board, so you guys can all look at it and think about what's in there, what you would want to repeat, some things you probably wouldn't want to know about anymore. And so, yeah, it's going to be open to anybody that has any thoughts about what they, feel is important to know about Wellfleet Harbor. And he'll have a lot of input. I would think he would know what to look for, I would hope.
Yep, good.
Great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming in. It's important. Okay, coming up, use of town property, White Crest Beach, Kendra Luongo. We talked about this last meeting, and she has responded to the questions we have. Anything the board wants to say about this? Or can we just comment and take a vote to approve?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I thought she did a really nice job
Yes.
responding to our questions and thorough, and I'm comfortable now approving it.
Anybody else have any comments? Helen?
Yeah, so we said, one of our questions was, so are you guys going to be down on the beach or up in the parking lot? And the answer was interesting. It was dunes, which means,
So I thought about that a lot.
so what?
So what it means is that if she has it, say, at lowish tide, because she does not want it at high tide, that they're going to be down on the beach, but they're not going to be near the water. They're going to be more near the dunes.
Okay, so that was my guess, too.
Yeah.
And we didn't, confer about it up until this moment, and I guess, let's hope that's what she meant.
It is.
Yeah, well,
It is.
no, I mean, if she's not
Well,
here.
it is.
You think and I think, we don't know.
And, Madam,
If you and I agree on what we think, it's true.
We agree about a whole lot more things than people who don't go to
I'm
these
true.
meetings know
Um,
about.
Madam Chair, just in case that people didn't see it, she also had 2 sentences on being sensitive to erosion, which is
Yes.
my
like
primary
that.
concern.
Yes. So any further discussion, or may I have a motion?
I move to approve the use of White Crest Beach by Kendra Luongo on June the 27th, 2020, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., subject to the conditions, if any, listed on the application form for a fee of $110.
Second?
All in favor? Great, thank you. And now moving on to the Chamber of Commerce request to use the Town Hall lawn on December 7th for their annual tree lighting and singing and little get-together.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Shout out to Andrew back there. This is his little
yeah.
endeavor. He always does a great job with the kids. I move to approve the use of Town Hall lawn by the Chamber of Commerce on December the 7th, 2019, from 4 to 5:30 p.m. by the Wellfleet Chamber of Commerce, subject to the conditions, if any, as listed on the application form.
Second.
You
All in favor? Great, thank you.
can judge the tiebreaker on that one, Courtney.
And now we have review and discuss appropriate action in regard to a letter from Marconi Beach Restaurant regarding temporary closures. Are there any comments or
I have a
questions about that?
You first.
Okay.
So the only real problem I have with it is that there's no date
Yeah,
that he says he's planning on reopening.
yeah.
But that said, I don't think that he's been closed long enough to be in any kind of violation for the Liquor Control Board. So,
He's,
Right.
that's my mistake. Madam Chair, forgive me for interrupting, but I did talk to Jean, and the ABC does not have a, a policy on when they're open or when they're closed. It's us.
right.
It's all on us.
Oh, there's no set amount of
No,
time?
no.
We just set 6 weeks.
I-
Is that our policy?
But
I mean,
6 weeks.
I
Oh,
thought you
if
could be
you're
closed for
more
6
than
weeks.
We can let him
And then-
close for as long as he wants. He's, the ABC does not have a,
Okay, I only thought that because of what you had said last
exactly,
meeting.
and I was wrong. I
Okay.
apologize for that.
No, that's fine. Okay, so he doesn't need to give us a date, but late winter could be March. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, I don't think that that has to be an issue right now. We don't have to set a date or a continuation or a time right now.
Yeah,
Helen? Okay, is this, do you want me to stop Mike so you can go?
Oh, no,
Oh,
I was
okay.
waiting for Mike to be done.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, I mean, like, personally, I think it's, I'm okay with this, but I would like to have a better understanding. I mean, I'd like to have a sort of idea about what month he's talking about opening. It is a year-round liquor license. I don't feel like it's fair to the places like the Wicked Oyster who do sort of abide by our sort of 6-week
They try and give us year-round.
policy, and they try and work
Yeah.
around other restaurants. And I know there's not enough business for all these restaurants to be open. There's enough people, but not enough business. I don't know why.
So I would
That's the
ju,
case.
I would just say that Mr. Swart has been in business for a long time, on and off with different endeavors. And he is trying to sell it. I think he would like to know exact dates too, but he can't. You know, he thought he had it sold, it was going to change, and then
Right.
this happened. So I think to give him the benefit of the doubt, that we could just ask to continue this, or when he does have an idea to come back before us. That restaurant's been in business for, how long ago is a Chinese restaurant? 60, 45, 50, there's a Chinese restaurant before, Serena's.
Famous Tangs?
Nope, totally different, but there was a Chinese restaurant, yep. So, I'm not sure what the exact, you were too young.
Maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, it's
I
true.
remember Chinese food,
Yeah.
generally.
So anyway, I don't know what the right wording would be, whether we want to continue it or wait to hear a more exact date from the business. Maybe it'll sell, that'll change everything. If it sells, the liquor license would have to be changed, so. What would you like to say, Helen?
My issue before, and help me out, was not that Rosemarie wanted to close. I'm a great champion of people running their businesses as they wish. It was that if you want to close, and you've been licensed by us, you have to ask permission to close. And Mr. Swart didn't do that, and
Twice in a row.
he also didn't do it in this letter. So here's what I think I'm looking at. I'm looking at a wonderful business run by wonderful people, trying to act in good faith. And somewhere in the communication from the office, or I don't know who,
Right.
he wasn't given that nice, clear thought, which is you have to ask the licensing board if you can close. Just, that's what I wanted in the letter, you know? and I didn't get it. So I would agree with Janet. Can we just bounce this to another meeting, yet another
Yeah.
meeting, and get the letter, just having him ask permission? Because, as I said
For
before,
temporary closure. Can we say temporary closure or
he
just
can ask for
closure?
whatever kind of closure he wants. It's up to him. But as I said before, this is not fair to the people who actually do what they're supposed to do. And I think it's a breakdown in communication. I don't think these
Yeah,
are bad
I agree.
people.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Justina.
I read this letter that he was asking to close, and
He doesn't state it clearly, but I'm
I think we're
rereading
being-
it for the third time,
I
so
think
yeah.
we're really getting
Yeah.
persnickety here.
Yeah.
He's served the community for decades. He's tired. He's selling his restaurant. There's a loss in that. He wrote a letter. His understanding is they wrote the right letter, and I just think we should improve it.
Yeah.
I-
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with
Okay,
Justina
I
that,
agree.
this letter is informing us that he closed, but it's the equivalent of asking permission. We still get to decide whether he gets his license or not. I mean,
Right.
he's informed us what happened. It already closed. I think this is tantamount to a letter, asking permission. I mean, the language doesn't
Yeah, it's not- it's
explicitly
not exact,
say,
yeah,
may
it's
I
not
please
ours.
close, but he's already closed,
And Mr. Hort wants to say
I
something.
do remember his letter from last year, and it was very similar.
Yeah.
He didn't have an exact date as to
Yeah.
when he was going to reopen, and the motion that we made was to approve that he was able to close his restaurant the date that he specified, to reopen late winter 2020.
Okay.
So we didn't require him last year to have a specific
So let's
date.
not
could I-
set a new precedent.
So could I have a motion to approve the temporary closure of Marconi Beach Restaurant?
Janet?
I move-
All right.
I'm sorry, I have something else to say
All right.
that I haven't said yet. So I'm hearing from two people here, and also from you
Three.
just now, three, that we're okay with this language and we have an understanding of it, and I can go with that. The only thing I'd request is when the office writes back to him to say, we understand this to mean that you are requesting that we close. And it was unclear, which will maybe make it a little more specific to them. And I'm not so concerned about the actual dates if it's ballparked.
Right.
Okay? I was just concerned that he, for some reason, didn't think he had to do what the others did.
Yeah.
Okay? That's all I wanted to say.
Right, good. So can I have a motion? May I have a motion?
I move to approve
The closure?
the temporary closure of Marconi Beach Restaurant, and I think we need to approve his liquor license because we didn't do it
Yeah.
last time,
You do.
and to approve his year-round liquor license.
Oh, that's not on here.
It's not because I wasn't sure what you were going to do.
So we have to do
So
that
I
next
can
time.
give you the direct motion if you'd like.
No,
No, I
it's-
think we can, because it
The
says,
same one you made last week for all the other ones, that you're moving
No.
to approve the renewal of the liquor license for a one-year period, beginning January 1st, 2020, and ending December 31st, 2020.
I understand that, and I remember it.
are you saying we
Thank you.
can't do it because it's not on the agenda?
It is not on the agenda, and we can just do it next time, because
I believe that Jean has a deadline to send these into the state,
Yeah.
though.
Review
So
and
it
discuss
says
appropriate
appropriate
action. I
action.
think we,
temporary closure.
That's not necessarily, that's not, I mean, if that's how you want, if that's how you want to go about it, that's fine, but
What is the deadline for Jean?
I don't know for sure, but she has two things here, either saying you approve all of the liquor licenses, or you deny his, and this gets sent to the state. So I unfortunately don't know her deadline, but
Janet?
So I think, go ahead,
Oh, sorry.
Justina, go ahead.
I believe that we can have a revision to the agenda if the board feels it's necessary.
Yeah, I think we can in this case because it's pretty obvious, and we did have the mention of it at our last meeting. I don't see if there's a problem, and if there is a problem, Courtney will hear about it on Monday.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Kathleen?
may I ask Mr. DeVasto to do the motion again with the dates that Courtney just mentioned?
May I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Yeah.
So you approved the liquor license during the November 12th
Did.
meeting.
Oh, we did approve.
Your motion was to
Good.
move to renew the liquor license for Marconi Beach Restaurant contingent upon the owner's appearance before the board or a letter of explanation.
I
Great.
thought so.
Wonderful. Yeah, I was
We did it.
confused. Good.
Thank you.
So my
Okay.
motion was good enough to
Yeah.
carry.
Yeah, just the
Yes.
temporary closure.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in
Second.
favor? Okay, thank
it
you.
up there.
Thank you,
I
guys.
can't second my own motion.
Yeah,
I
so-
forgot I made the motion.
But that's okay.
It's getting confusing.
Yeah, we need to be careful with our agenda items as
Yes,
listed.
we
We
Yeah, but
know that.
We got it right.
We're
Yeah.
tiptoeing.
Yeah. Thank you for straightening that out, and Dan, thank you for looking it up.
Sure.
Yeah.
You didn't remember the amendments?
Okay. Cable advisory, the local, okay, new select board policy, that's what it's being called. Okay.
Hello, thank you for having me back here. This is my third time that I
Gotta
get to
keep,
come
pull
spend
it
the night with
closer.
you.
Yeah.
This is, or do you want to introduce?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Wertgen. I'm also on the Cable Advisory Committee.
So I have a couple things I'd like to say, and then you can go ahead and ask me any questions. The policy is materially the same as the last time I was here. I looked into the two things that we discussed, which is I added the line specifying we will not tape executive session, and I looked into our closed captioning issue, and I'm proud to announce that all of our videos are being put on YouTube, and YouTube offers free closed captioning. So that channel is being built. All of yours are on there now with closed captioning in case you want to go back and have some fun watching them. The YouTube channel is linked to on our brand new Wellfleet Town Media homepage on the town website, which also sends you to our Facebook page and to a form you can submit if you'd like a DVD copy of any meeting. So that's been built. The second thing I'd like to say is I want to reiterate, because I don't know if I made it clear, but everything about this program that we have, our town media program, is paid for by money that comes from the Comcast Receipts Fund. That money can't be used for anything else, as far as I'm aware. It's money that people don't get to opt out of paying. It's a franchise fee taken out of the subscribers who pay for Comcast service. And right now, we have a lot of money saved up. The people of Wellfleet have already paid for this service, and we're choosing not to provide it to the best of our ability. And the third thing that I'd like to mention is that it's been suggested that I'm not the appropriate person to bring this up, because if this policy is passed, it's work that I would be doing. And that's true. It's work that I would share with Tom Cole and Andrew Staker, who are amazing and give me a lot of great help. I'm advocating for it because I am the point person. People come to me, I get the calls, the emails, the texts, saying I'd like to see this, I want to find this, I can't find this, and I feel like I really have my finger on the pulse of what the residents want. Taping our regulatory boards is a really popular idea with the town, and I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the Cable Advisory Committee. Most towns who have this policy, it was brought by their cable advisory committees. I'm the chair of ours, which is something I disclosed when I became the chair, that I wanted to serve in this job, and the board found no problem with it then. There are 4 of us on the committee, and if you'd like to have somebody else speak to it, that's definitely something we can do. And I just wanted to make that clear for everybody. So now I'd like to answer any questions.
May I interrupt for just 1 second? Courtney has said that we didn't actually call for a vote on the last motion regarding the cable advisory. So could you just ask if everybody was in favor of that vote?
What you mean from a couple months ago or a month ago?
I'm sorry, about
The
the
temporary closure.
the
Oh, the
temporary
temporary
closure.
closure, okay.
Yeah, I got my.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? But yes, okay.
Well, my motion, I didn't
We
finish
kind of,
making
we
it.
kind
You
of
made the
slurred it,
motion.
we kind of slurred,
Kathleen
we,
seconded.
everybody, well, I thought I
then-
did. Okay,
well, I
all in
voted.
favor of the vote?
No, I move to,
It's already been moved.
It's already been moved.
done. We
Okay,
just
all
didn't
in
take the vote.
favor,
Just the vote.
all in
Just raise your
favor,
hand.
say
Thank you.
aye.
Thank you.
I did, I kind of slurred by that, okay.
Thank you. and I'm
Thank you,
sorry.
guys, thank you for catching that. So,
I raised my hand.
So I just want to say it as a person on a town committee, it's not just a matter of you having your pulse on it and being a good representative, which you are, you speak very clearly, you're very good about it. It's called a conflict of interest, and that's a law, right? So I don't know where you want to go with that, but it is a conflict of interest. That's somebody who's advocating for more work for themselves, for more money for themselves, for more hours for themselves, cannot advocate for that. It's to your benefit. But we can get into that, but that's something you do, so somebody else said it to you also, so that is something that has to be looked into. You can consult our lawyer or something, but I do feel like that's the thing. So, what?
No. Janet, may I be recognized, please?
No, I'm still talking.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you for interrupting my train of thought.
I'm so sorry.
So all right, thanks, Helen. All right, so I'll have Justina go, because she'll jog my memory.
Yeah, it's not a
Maybe.
question of being appropriate. It's part of transparency is observing open meeting law and state ethics law, and going through the ethics training module. And in general, the state doesn't allow the participation, deliberation, and bringing before the select board any kind of measure that affects you financially. So that's all I wanted to add to Janet's comment. And again, it's part of transparency and observing the laws the state puts forward for transparency.
I just wanted to say that Mia did bring the conflict in front of you when this program was started.
That's not how the state law reads. Announcing it is fine if it's an appearance of conflict of interest, but if it is a conflict, you have to recuse, like Mike for shellfishing leaves the room. And it's just, there's many aspects to transparency. So anyways, look, when I started in doing town government work, I couldn't believe all the laws we had to follow. So we're not saying bad. We're just, it's our job to bring it up.
Another piece of it is that other people can record. It does not have to be Mia necessarily who's recording these meetings. We have Tom, we have Andrew, we've interviewed other people for these jobs. It doesn't have to be Mia who does this.
So the question would be, she is the advocate for this policy.
Mm-hmm.
I might even say we asked her to write it, or somebody wanted her to go through with it. So she wrote the policy that is benefiting her. Conflict of interest. She's financially gaining from this.
But if
possibly, right? And actually, she, yeah.
But we all on the committee drafted the policy too. It's not just.
So that's just not the issue. I know.
Okay.
So just reread the conflict of interest. But I know Helen's like dying to say something. So
Yes, this is so easy, and it's so routine. And I'm sorry
in
that
trouble.
when you were given the material, when you first got on the committee, you were given a copy of the open meeting law, and you were given a copy of the conflict of interest law, which is a little less well-drafted than the open meeting law. What you do is you call the ethics commission, you get the attorney of the day, and you can talk with them. It doesn't cost anything. We are your appointing authority. So all you have to do, because this actually does affect your finances, it's not an appearance, it's an actual thing, is fill out the appropriate disclosure form, which the attorney of the day will help you with, although it may be all clear as a bell to you. And then you submit it to us, and we act on it. And you did the right thing in the spirit of the conflict of interest law when you first discussed this, when you first came before us. And it's very routine, and we are in on the board, a slightly different position. Because if you're an elected official, you have to recuse, okay? You have an appointing authority, and there are basically two appointing authorities in town, pretty much. The moderator, who does like the FinCom and the Personnel Board and so forth, and us, we do most other boards and committees. So this is easy, it's routine, and all you have to do is submit it to us, and we'll act on it at the next appropriate meeting. And I'll send you tonight the number of, or just go to the
State ethics.
the State Ethics Commission's website, and there it says advice about it. You'll get the attorney of the day, you call them. It's not a whistleblowing part of that agency, and you'll get all the help you need. They're excellent. I use them a lot.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that. Is there anything else, as long as I'm here, that I can answer questions about?
Yes, yep. Kathleen?
I guess we've established conflict of interest and all of that stuff. Are we going to talk about the policy?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And in, yep.
go.
Justina?
Without filling out the right form, should Mia be advocating this policy?
No, not tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think we should discuss it tonight, actually.
Yeah.
Just to protect you.
Sure.
Really.
You're right, because
I
I've
don't-
never had a conflict of interest, but
These
you're
are
right. Yeah.
serious things.
Yeah,
Like, for me, when I've had to do things and called the ethics board,
Yeah.
like, they're very clear about the ramifications of
Yeah.
potentially, it doesn't matter if it's like the monetary amount doesn't matter. That's the thing, And like with shellfishing, it's a little weird because over 10% of the population is involved in shellfishing, but they're not all involved in aquaculture. And so anything that affects aquaculture, I just can't, even though I know and I feel it, I bite my tongue because I know so much about it, but I can't speak on it because it could be construed that somehow, even if I'm not directly financially benefiting for it, somebody who is a competitor, quote unquote, may affect my finances
Madam Chair.
in the smallest way, and it doesn't matter. So just to protect you, I don't think that at
You're
this
right,
meeting
you're right.
we
No, you're right.
should discuss it
Yeah.
until you've gone through the process
You're right.
And
of
Madam
getting
Chair,
a decision. Yeah.
you may not be aware, but anybody can file a complaint anonymously to the State Ethics Commission, and then they review them all. And if it's televised, everyone's watching. So kind of, there's a lot of different dimensions to transparency, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
So do we want to move to postpone this until next time?
I think we
Yeah,
have to.
and
We
I just
do,
want to
sorry.
say may I say one thing? I hope you feel this is supportive.
Oh, I do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're just trying to
embarrassed
do
Oh,
it
I'm
right.
sure. And I want to be clear that if I didn't think about this, and if I
Right.
had known if it was a problem earlier, I certainly would have addressed it, so.
It's challenging being a volunteer.
So I will say what Helen always says is she really wants everyone on any committee, any advisory board to, there's actually tests you're supposed to take for the conflict of interest and, what else?
When I became
but did you
cable advisory chair, yeah, back in the spring.
Yeah.
So you took those tests and so it didn't cross your mind? Okay.
It's okay.
So I guess I didn't
Yeah.
get,
Yeah.
We are,
Well,
Did you
sometimes
pass?
you don't feel like it's a conflict of
Yeah.
interest because it's
But
not
it
like
is.
affecting your like quote at like a certain level. It does, you sort of can look beyond it, but in reality, the state doesn't.
have to go by the law,
An open meeting law. Okay.
not your
Okay,
intention.
so
So
we all
can we have-
get it.
can
Can
we-
we move to
yes.
postpone?
Yes.
Yeah, move to postpone.
Please?
Yeah.
Would you like to make a motion?
I move to postpone the policy of taping all the committees.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to
That's
keep you
okay.
waiting.
Thank you for that.
Okay. And now, Army Corps of Engineering Access Privileges Renewal. This comes up every year. if Mr. Hort wants to explain it, or
So
anybody
very
else.
briefly, the Army Corps of Engineers has been working on cleanup on the property that we own in the seashore, which a lot of us refer to as the landing strip. They've just asked for a renewal to renew our permission to them to continue to work on that property for another year.
Yeah.
What, you don't remember this?
Oh, yes, I do.
We all remember it, yeah.
Respectfully, I don't think, isn't it the site of the old camp, not the landing strip?
No.
I actually wanted to see this
Mean
on
where
the
the,
map.
the
Because they were also
shooting
cleaning
range
up over
was?
here.
Hold on a minute, wait. So, Mayor, Justina, no, Kathleen, what?
What's that?
The old shooting range?
That's what I thought.
No, so so Dan, whatever it is, I've done it before, I think it's fine, but I don't think it's the landing strip. I think the landing strip has a little bit of a corner of it.
It's Camp Wellfleet.
Yeah, it's Camp Wellfleet, and a little tiny bit of that is the landing
Yes,
strip.
I misspoke. It's at the former Camp Wellfleet.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's in your packet.
Yes, that's the reason. Thank you. Yeah, it's okay. Have you
Okay,
been
is
there?
there any further discussion? May I have a motion?
Actually, I have a question real quick.
Go ahead.
What are they doing in there?
Testing for
Did you-
munitions,
Did you read this?
Okay.
lead,
Horrible.
Environmental testing.
yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
soil
fine
Big
with that.
big little
samples.
holes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I
move
guess
to,
I
appro-
glazed over that section. I must have missed a page.
I move to approve the renewal of the right of entry, numbers 2734, access privilege for the Army Corps of Engineers for the parcel located on Assessor's Map 42, Lot 601, for a one-year term not to exceed January 23rd, 2021.
Second.
All in favor? Great, thank you. And now we have a request to close town offices from 3 to 5 p.m. on Thursday, December 12th, for staff holiday appreciation party. Any questions, comments?
I'll be doing all the cooking for it.
Ooh.
Oh, great, for us.
We are going to do
are
the
you
same
gonna-
thing we
you're gonna
did
be able
last
to
year
show
because
up, aren't
everybody
you?
seemed to
Right?
really enjoy it. Yes.
And I'll be in
That is
Boston.
tragic, buddy, come on. Okay, excuse me, what did you say, Dan?
We're going to be doing it the same place in the same way we
Same-
did it last year, which
okay.
everybody seemed to really enjoy.
I think it
was
was
lovely.
great for
Morale.
morale. It's really important. Yes, Helen?
I won't be there. I'll be in Boston, about to be operated on, but my heart will be with you, and I appreciate the staff.
We'll send you some pictures of us having a great time.
Having
How's that?
fun.
That would be good.
Okay.
I move to approve the request to close town offices from 3 to 5 p.m. on Thursday, December 12th, for a staff holiday appreciation party.
Second.
All in favor?
Oh, me too. Sorry.
Yep.
I'm in favor.
Okay, select board reports, anything to comment on?
I have a quick one.
Okay.
Just really briefly, the Cape Cod Water Fund Committee has moved to take a couple of months off. The bylaw committee is hunkering in to hash out some specifics.
Yeah, great. And I will say, even though it's not a report, I did get in touch with the head of the DCR, Jim Montgomery, and he requested that we withhold a meeting until after the holidays, so I will let everybody know about that when it happens. Anything else for select board reports? On to the town administrator's report. Any questions or comments? And now topics for future discussion. Kathleen?
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hort, I would like to bring the Board of Water Commissioners in as soon as you can possibly do it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any
Okay,
reason?
can't discuss it,
Oh,
not on the agenda.
Sorry.
Okay, and any other future
Yeah,
discussion?
I was going to
agenda?
actually ask for the same thing, not having talked with Kathleen, just because it's ongoing and they've got some action there and it's important. given that there was a lack of communication like a season or two ago, to make sure that we keep putting out about it, just in a kind of simple, clear way as the situation unfolds.
What lack of communication?
Wait,
We're not going to discuss it, it's a
right.
future agenda.
So, couple things. I do want to have Mia's disclosure happen as soon as possible at our next meeting.
Okay.
Right,
Well,
you know,
we're
which
hoping-
doesn't,
Yeah, we're hoping.
which doesn't take any time, it's simple. And the other thing is,
Sure.
yeah, it is up to her, but if she does it, I would like to be able to be responsive, because she's now come before us a lot. The second thing is, I've been just asking around a lot and listening a lot anyway. There's so many people that are so much more involved because of the video coverage. And I really hope that, given what we did here before.
We're not going to discuss an agenda
No, I
item, are
know.
we?
What
Okay.
I want is to have us discuss, given that we're going to have a lot of money, according to what we just heard, to really have all, even the minor committees covered.
Helen, we're not
We're
supposed
not
to
not
talk
discussing,
about
so
that.
you,
Sounds like a
want as your
discussion.
that's not,
That's
yeah.
not- oh,
It
okay.
is, so no, it's on the, it will be on, she
Thank
will
you.
come before us again, and that's when we'll talk about
Okay,
it.
good. Thank you. You're right. Thank you for stopping.
Okay, anybody else? Future agenda?
I have one.
Mike,
Do you have
okay.
one?
I'm good.
Okay. Derelict buildings
Oh,
in the
Bring it before the
center,
plan, bring it before the
historical.
planning board.
No, don't shake your head. I would like to
Okay.
discuss
Good,
the
good, no,
the
that's, yeah.
ramifications and the leverage we have over derelict buildings that have been left derelict for extended periods of time in our historic commercial district.
Yes.
And you know,
This comes up every so often, it's been discussed.
Yeah.
for like
I know,
20
but
But
I wanna
I'm glad,
discuss it.
I'm glad
I
we've
wasn't
talked,
here.
yeah, yeah, no, it's good. Bring it up, I think it's good. Yeah.
It warrants discussion.
Anybody else? And so, a reminder, our next meeting will be January 7th.
7.
Yes.
We have a meeting on December 10th.
Oh, I'm
But we
sorry.
do not have a meeting on December 17th.
Oh, geez, it's me like 2019 is already crossed off my
I
list.
was agreeing
We
with
do
you.
have one in December, all right. I thought we were out of here.
And you
No,
have to be here.
okay.
You're the chair.
I am, I would have figured it out tomorrow morning.
Helen will chair
Okay.
if you need a day off.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, you show up, please.
Okay, sorry.
Actually, the vice chair.
Forgive me for
I'm just
having a little
I
brain
was just making a
fog.
joke.
Okay, anyone else? Future discussions, agenda items? All right, correspondence vacancy reports. And as someone like Denny O'Connell pointed out, the Select Board is responsible for filling seats on committees. So everybody, that's going to be your homework, is find somebody to fill a space.
So correspondence.
Now into correspondence.
Okay. So, we have our select board address, and that's nice. And recently, I'm old, I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
shockable. I got a really surprisingly obscene.
We all did. I think
And,
we all did.
okay, so my question is, did the rest of us get this outstandingly inappropriate
Yeah.
email?
I don't know what
You
you're
get-
referring to.
So
think I
Courtney has her hand up for an explanation.
So part of having an email in general and having one that's linked to a municipality is that people can find the BOS email on the website. We get numerous emails a week that I just mark as spam or junk,
Yeah.
including the one you're referring to, which just basically was a hacking spam email saying that we have video of you doing obscene things. Don't click on those links. This is a message
Yeah.
to board members. I've
Everyone.
sent a message to
Yeah.
town employees and staff and
I
everybody.
didn't click
Got it.
Whether you
I
get
didn't
it or not, like, just don't,
It
if you
was
think it's
spam.
suspicious, if you have any questions, if it's something you obviously I mean, nobody would ever get a recording of that anyway, but just don't click on them, mark it as spam and delete
Yeah.
it. It's just a junk email. That's why I don't even put it into the report, because it's not anything relevant and
Okay.
it's spam.
Thank you.
Yeah,
But
so
we get a
really
few
know
of these
that.
things. We get a lot of
Yeah.
people who send us, like, we got one today about, I'm a
Security,
consultant
yeah.
specialist, I want to provide a service, like, they're not real. They're not real
It's an
people.
advertisement,
Yeah.
yeah.
However, we need to look at them. I did not get into the office to look at the actual paper correspondence file. Did anything come in that might be?
No.
Nothing
No,
that
okay.
we didn't
Yeah, I
get.
usually always go in on
Yeah.
the, day. Okay, that's all, thank you.
Good. Nothing else on correspondence and vacancies. Okay, minutes. Did everyone get the
Yeah, okay. So,
amended minutes?
couple things.
Well, we got, Courtney gave us amended minutes, right?
Yes.
For the 6th and the 12th.
And I got them in late, and there are a couple of things, and where is my little Post-it? It's completely disappeared.
Well, we have, so do you know we have the amended minutes
I do, but there
Okay.
are two things
that you
that,
want to point out?
yeah, in other words, this is just a minor thing, which is throughout the November 19th minutes, hold on. Where's the one? Oh, here it
November
is.
12th?
Yes, sorry, November 12th, yes. November 12th, throughout the document, when Chief Hurley is referred to, you have to, call him Acting Chief Hurley. That's just a typo thing. In other words, it was in the front, that he was here at that meeting, but then throughout the document, it's just Chief Hurley. So that's just a typo. The second thing is, there was something kind of important that Chief Hurley said. And,
Acting Chief Hurley.
yes, thank you, Acting Chief Hurley.
Thanks, Mike.
And I asked Courtney to clarify it today, and so I'd like to just make an amendment, everything else is good, to clarify what it was he said.
Okay,
And I'm looking for the spat part. Here we go. Okay. Hold on. Where is it in the spat thing? Can you help me with this?
well, we don't know what
Courtney?
you're looking for.
Yeah, so Helen is referring to in
Where is it?
Acting Chief Hurley and regular Chief Pauly's presentation about the Oyster Fest, where Chief Hurley, Acting Chief Hurley, had noted that the fire and police departments are not actively involved in the hiring of the security firm, that SPAT hires the security firm, but he noted that in the future, he would like to see a more active participation consultant-based relationship with the town and SPAT when looking at hiring the firm in the future.
They
So-
want to vet the company.
Exactly, yeah, so he noted
And
that,
that is in the notes now, in the
it
minutes
is
now.
noted
No,
that,
it's not. So we're going to put that in there.
so, okay, so it currently says,
Which paragraph is it, dear
I'm
Courtney?
looking. Okay, so I can't count the paragraphs, but it says, Acting Chief Hurley noted the police and fire chiefs met with SPAT to discuss the event, and the discussion went well. He said it was an open and productive discussion. Acting Chief Hurley noted that SPAT hires security for the event. That's where I left it at, because I had originally included that in the future, something along the lines of that, they would like to see this, be more consultant-based, but Helen had questions during the amendment, so I'm not,
So-
Helen, where would you like it to go now?
Yes, so right at the end of that sentence she just said, to continue it, to clarify what it was he meant, which is, in the future, end of that sentence, a period, and then in the future, he, that is to say Hurley, it's very clear, in the future, he would like to see the town included in that process. Okay? And the
Good,
process
fine,
is
that's
clear.
great.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's the
good
only thing I
idea.
want to add, and I'm sorry that it wasn't in there, but I couldn't get the video.
That sounds good.
All right,
Thank you.
good.
So I would like to, may I do this?
Yeah.
I would like to move that we,
Oh,
the
okay.
minutes, yeah, to what, really?
I was going to say, when you,
Yeah, do it. Okay, so I would like to move to approve the minutes of November 12th, 2019 as amended.
Second.
all in favor? Do we want to do all the minutes at once? Or
No,
do you
we
have, you have
don't.
each one going over? Okay.
There's more.
Yeah. And then there are the minutes of the special so-called meeting on November 6th. And
somewhere.
May I move, I don't have anything to add there. So may I move that we approve the minutes of the meeting of November 6, 2019 as amended?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous?
And now, the 19th. So, was I there? I wasn't there.
No.
So I can, I'm not going to, can we do the two separate things? So move to approve and then move to release? Okay, I'm not going to.
We don't need to approve the.
Oh, we don't, they're not
They're just a
executive.
work meeting.
Yeah, so I'm just not going to do
The
this because I
executive
wasn't there.
ones?
Nope, the 6th was, or the 19th was the work meeting where you discussed the,
Oh, yeah.
that thing you discussed on the 19th that I just can't recall.
Long-term.
Yes, long-term and short-term use of
Short-term
town
use of
property.
I
town.
blanked out too,
Better.
completely.
Was it a dream? I don't know, but.
Here it is.
I move to approve the minutes of November 19th, 2019 as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Abstain because I wasn't there. I still could have voted to do it, but I
Yes,
don't
you
feel
could.
like.
We
I
know
don't
that. We
feel
know
like
that,
it.
yeah. Everybody should know that by now.
minutes if you weren't there?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, and in other words, that, releasing them trumps that,
Okay.
according to the.
Now, what about executive minutes?
Okay, so
I thought,
No, we have to do that in the.
we have to do that in executive session.
Yeah.
So,
When are we going into-
are we ready? So we're going to move into executive session pursuant to Chapter 30A, Sections 22G2, for the approval of executive session minutes. I move to close the open meeting and adjourn into executive session, again pursuant to Chapter 30A, Sections 22G2, to approve the executive session minutes of July 23rd, September 30th, and October 25th.
Second.
And now we say voice vote,
Roll call.
roll call vote. Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. So we want to go into the other room while Andrew
Yeah.
clears out? Okay.